ሰላም ተኸታተልቲ ናይ ቻነል ከመይ ከኒኹም ከመይ ትኾኑ ሰናይ ክትኮኑ ናይ ወትሪ ምንዮተይ እዩ ኣብዛ ቪድዮ እዚኣ ኣዝዩ ኣገዳሲ ሓበሬታ ብዛዕባ ጥዕናናን ብዛዕባ ጥዕና ደቅናን ዘገድስ ንኹልና ድማ ኣስተውዒልና ንኽንከይድ ዝተፈላለየ ሓበሬታ ዝመፀና መሚና ዝጠቕመና ንኽንፈልጥ ዝሕግዘና እዩ መቸም ቆልዓ ምስ ተወለደ ብፍላይ ኣብዚ ምዕቡሉ ዓለም ተሰዲድና ዘለና ካብ ንእስነቱ ብተደጋጋሚ ብዙሕ ግዜ ክታበት እዩ ዝወስድ ስለምንታይ እዚ ክታበት ይወስድ ዘሎ እንታይ ጥቕሚ ኣለዎ እዚ ክታበት እዚ ነናቱ ሕማማት እዩ ዝከላኸለልና መብዛሕትኡ ወላዲ ካባይ ጀሚርካ ደቀይ ክኽተቡ ከለዉ እኹል ሓበሬታ ኣይነበረናን ብዛዕባኡ እውን ዝወሰድናዮ ትምህርቲ የብልናን ስለዚ ኣብዛ ቪድዮ እዚኣ ሓደ ዓይነት ሓበሬታ ክንርኢ ኢና ዲስካሽን ክንርኢ ኢና ሕቶን መልስን ክንርኢ ኢና ካብዚ ተበጊስና ድማ መዛዘሚ ክታበት ንደቅኹም የድልዮ ዶ ኣየድልዮን ናባኹም እየ ዝገድፎ ናትኩም ተወሳኺ መፅናዕትን መርመራን ክትገብሩ ዝተዋህበና ነገር ከም ዘለዎ ተቐቢልና ከም ዶግማ ወሲድና ክንከይድ ኣይምሕፀንን እየ ኣብዛ ቪድዮ እዚኣ ድማ ዲቤት ወይ ከዓ ዲስካሽንስ ካልእ ድማ ኣብዚ ምዕቡል ዓለም ቆልዑ ዝውለዱ ዘሎ ብዙሕ ግዜ እዚ ኦቲዝም ዝበሃል ሕማም ንብዙሓት ቆልዑ የጥቅዓሉ ወይ ከዓ ብዙሕ በዚ ፀገም እዚ ዝተተንከፉ ቆልዑ ኣለውና ኣብ ታሕቲ እውን ሓብሩ ንክንደይ ከም ዘለዎ ንክንፈልጥ እምበኣር እንታይ ዝምድና ኣለዎ ምስ ክታበት ዝብል ብተደጋጋሚ ዝለዓል ሕቶ እዩ ኣብዚ እውን ብዛዕባኡ ክዝረብ ክንርኢ ኢና ላይክ ግበርዋ እዛ ቪድዮ እዚኣ ቀዳሞት 12 ወይ 6 ደቃይቕ ርኢኻ ኮሜንት ምፅሓፍ የድልን እዩ ኩሉ ክሳብ መወዳእታ ምክንያቱ ነቲ ንሱ ዝብሎ ዘሎ ዲቤት ዝብሉ ብካልእ መንገዲ እውን ክንርኢ ስለ ዝኾና ላይክ ግበርዋ ናትኩም መደምደምታ ድማ ግበሩ እዚ ምክሪ ናይ ጥዕና ኣይኮነን ሰሚዕኩም ናትኩም ሓበሬታ ኣኪብኩም ናትኩም መደምደምታ ትገብረሉ ሶ ንውሕ ዝበለ ኢንትሮዳክሽን ይበኩም ኣለኹ መጀመሪ ክኾነና እንታይ እዩ ኣርእስቲ ፕሬዚደንት ናይ ኣሜሪካ ክኸውን ሕፁይ ኮይኑ ዘሎ ዴሞክራት ዝውክል ዘሎ RFK ጁኒየር ሮበርት ጆን ኬነዲ ሓዉ ነቲ ፕሬዚደንት ኬነዲ ኣብ 1963 ዝተኸተለ ሓዉ ንምርጫ ሕፁይ ኮይኑ ቀሪብሎ ንሱ ኣብ ታውን ሆል መፅዩ ዝተሓተቶ ኢና ክንርኢ step by step ክንርኢ ኢና let's start first with this one okay give me a sec
Kennedy, one of the biggest controversies surrounding your candidacy is your stance on childhood vaccines. Nearly every scientific and medical organization, including the CDC, the FDA, the AMA, the American Academy of Pediatrics, all say you're wrong on this issue. This leads us to our very first question from our audience. It's Dr. Tariq Butt, who specializes...
I would ask you one thing. On what issue?
مخفتيت حتونات እንታይ ትብሎ ኣላ ሓደ ካብቲ ካንዲዳሲ ወይ ከዓ ሕፁይነት ናይ ፕሬዚደንት ናትካ እቲ ዝለዓለ ወይ ከዓ ኣገዳሲ ባእታ እንተሎ ፀረ ክታበት ስለ ዝኾንካ ኢኻ ትብሎ ኣላ እዚ ድማ እቲ ናትካ ሓበሬታን ርኢቶን ኣብ ክታበት ብኤፍዲኤ ማለት ፉድ ኤንድ ድራግ ኣሶሲዬሽን ማለት እዩ ኤንአይኤች ከምኡውን ሲዲሲ ካልኦት ትካላት ናይ መንግስቲ ነቲ ናትካ ርኢቶ ወይ ሓሳብ ኣብ ክታበታት ዘለካ ጉጉይ ኢሎሞ ሕጂ ድማ ዕዱም ዶክተር ዓዲምና ኣለና ብዛዕባ እዚ ነገር እዚ ዲስካስ ክንገብር ዝዓይነቱ ቋንቋ እዩ ካብ መጀመሪኡ እቲ ዲስካሽን ንነዊሕ ዓመታት ከምኡ ኢሎም እዮም ዝዓፅዎ ነይሮም ስምዕዎ ሕጂ
on childhood vaccines.
What about them?
And whether they ever cause autism or damage kids. They all say these vaccines have saved millions of lives.
Damage kids.
I don't think anybody has said they never have. There might be a child here, but overall, all those...
ብዛዕባ እንታይ እዩ ብንፁር ክትዛረብ ንደሊ ኸይልዋ ብዛዕባ ናይ ቆልዑ ክታበት እቲ ክታበት ድማ ስዒቡ ኦቲዝም ዝበሃል ፀገም ከም ዝፈጥር ኢላቶ ስለዚ ዝኾነ ፀገም ኣይፈጥሩን እዮም ዲ ክትብል ዘለኺ ኢልዋሲ ነከምኡስ ኣይበልናና ገለገለ ክህሉ ክእል እዩ ግን ብሓፈሻ እዚኦም ክታበት እዚኣቶም ጥዑያት እዮም ትካላት ናይ ጥዕና ድማ ኢንዶርስ ገብሮም ወይ ከዓ ንክንወስዶም ዝመኽሩና እዮም እያ ትብሎ ዘላ ሕጂ ንስማዕ እቲ ኮንቨርሴሽን
organizations say vaccines are safe and have saved millions.
እቶም ክታበታት ድማ ጥዑያት እዮም ሚልዮናት ሰባት ድማ ጥሒኖም ኣብኣ ክምልስ ክንሰምዓ ኢና
and millions of lives. But let's get to our audience question from Dr. Butts.
Good evening. Eradication of chickenpox and polio from the US and many parts of the world is a direct result of regular vaccines. Measles, mumps, rubella, and many diseases are preventable, and there's little to no evidence of these diseases in vaccinated population. Your vaccine stance is dangerous to the health and well-being of millions. Medical experts are deeply concerned about your message. How can we help you to come to the side of science?
So لك كم تنات هذا ما تقبلي دكتورين تايب لالو كتابتات بزح حمامات كم زحويو أب عالم أب تاريخ نفلت كم تشيكن بوكس كمون ميزلس قالوا حمامات بس إنك كتابت عالمنا زحشت إنه مدرخ كم زلوا نفلت ناتكا ريتو ناتكا حسابات ناتكا تعزبتن نبزح حسابات يدنا قرالو نبزح حساب نساي صار ساينسن صار فلتاتن زخيد من قديز مسل زلو كما يجيرنا ناف ساينس كتملس كن حق زا كان خلي بلالو حج ملسنا تسمعوا ريتوناتهم سميكم الله.
What was the question? How can you help me come to my senses?
No.
No. You are a very smart person.
Okay, so I think most people don't know what my stance is on vaccines. I've never been anti-vaccine, and I've said that hundreds and hundreds of times, but it doesn't matter because that is a way of silencing me. Using that pejorative to describe me is a way of silencing or marginalizing me. My position on vaccines, I think, virtually every American would agree with my stance on vaccines, which is that vaccines should be tested like other medicines. They should be safety tested. And unfortunately, vaccines are not safety tested. They're not.
أገዳሲ زربا سمعكم مجمريا إلو أنا صار كتابة أيكونكون ولا قات ميديا كل جزء صار كتابة مخاني كحبر زفت انتخونه أنا صار كتابة أيكونكون سلزي إزدما نعي أفين معتاو زتقملو من قدي بلالو أنا زبلو أنا نعتيري توجن تدقع قامي شع جزء خمس ملسكو كتابتات لك كم قالوت حمامات نسحنا ناتهم ويكا نوحسنات ناتهم ويكا نسيفت ناتهم ريجرس الويكا بدقيق ويكا ببرتع تيست تكون اللوم إزد ماي أنا نزيزك على زلوه نعمتها زتقالسكو يزبل زلو إذا زبلا زلو حجي بإيفيدنس ويكا مرقاقت كبالومي نسمعيو.
Of the 72 vaccine doses now mandated, essentially mandated, they're recommended, but they're really mandated for American children. None of them, not one, has ever been subject to a pre-licensing placebo-controlled trial.
Yes, they have.
No.
Yes, they have.
Okay, let me just say something. Dr. Fauci and many other people for many.
أبدي أقدس نت بخير كدخل أنت إلوه لك كم قالت أفاوس rigorous testing كجبر لهم خلاله برتع زخنة check جبر لهم عنه يزبل زلوا زدما كابتم سب أنكلتن كتابات نقول عزوها باب أمريكا سب أنكلتن دو استفل عليه كتابات يزوها نقول عبزوان زي أفسمانيات سلسته منيرهم جدما سب أنكلتن كابزياتهم حدا وننتخونه برتع زخنة مثلا تستخيل له يلن يبلو ماله نسادما قوة تخيد تبلا حجتك كتع كن رينا نبي جزء خيد خل. It's really interesting.
Many years said this, that Bobby Kennedy, when he says that, is wrong. So I met with Dr. Fauci in 2016, and I agreed to go on Trump's Vaccine Safety Commission, and I was with Aaron Siri.
إذا مخرزين كم قطباوي هيوتكم كتغيرون تدليو. مجمريا نجنزبن قطبان كنرجوهن كلالنا مخنياتو أبزي ردانا أبزي نفلتو كنعود سلزي نخل. كالاي كم تم عوتاتنا قطبان نجنزبن كم أعطون فليتنا كم تنسوم ينفس قبروزلو أبتي سيكتر سوم ينفس قبروزلو كنجبران لنا. سالساي عوتاتنا يقطبا تطوى يبلونيهم يأغلنا يبلونيهم نحن دما كم أتوم أسيلنا أب حدش سيكتراتنا أبتدنا يقدم سيكتراتن ينفسنا قبرنا كنكيدا لنا نزو كلك حقزوكم زغل بفلتاتكم بتكبر كورسات لنا أب كل مداينا هيوت فليكم سيكم تنغط وزدما كحقزوكم يو تتغمولو قبلكم يدالي. Thank you very much.
In Redwood and a number of other people, and we said to him, can you show us one test from any vaccine, pre-licensing safety test? And he said, I'll send it to you. I can't find one now. He never did. So we sued him. We sued Aaron Siri and I sued HHS. And after a year of litigation and stonewalling, they said that they could not provide a single safety study for any vaccine that is on the childhood schedule, pre-licensing safety study. So anybody
زيادة ماتا evidence ناتو بتعمي ترير زغنا متحفنا لاتو دريل أنتوني فاوتش تبل كيتكم عن ببوا بزح evidence ناتو بقلت سجبريو سنتايلوهم كنت مستجمرة عبد تشحن عشرة شدشتن أبتي ترامب بريزنت خلو أبتي نايت عنا ناي كتابات كوميتي نسل زنبرة ناي CDC حلاف نزنبرة أنتوني فاوتشي ما نتسلو ده هركم تعرفكم نسو نوعو كتاريخي ببعكا تزاري بين تايلا حتى تايلو ናይ ሴፍቲ ቴስት ዝተገበረ እቲ ክታበታት ኩሉ ሓደ ካብቶም ክታበታት ንሴፍቲ ወይ ከዓ ውሕስነት ከም ዘሎ ሓደገኛ ከም ዘይኮነ ኣብ ሰብ ቴስት ከም ዝተገበረ ሴፍቲ ቴስት ከም ዝተገበረሉ እስከ ሓበሬታ ሃበኒ መረጋገፂ ስለደለ ኢልዎስ ጌርናሉ ኢና ወይ ክሰደልከ ድሓራ ኢልዎ ከይዱ ድሕሪ ዓመት ወላ ሓንቲ መልሲ ስለ ዘይሃቦ ኣብ ቤት ፍርዲ ገሲስዎ ሊቲጌሽን ማለት ከሲስዎ ከይዱ ምስ ከሰሶ ድሕሪ ነዊሕ እቲ NIH ዝበሃል ኦርጋናይዜሽን ማለት እዩ ናሽናል ኢንስቲትዩት ኦፍ ሄልት ማለት ናይ ኣሜሪካ ንሱ መልሲ ሰዲድሉ ንሱ ድማ ዝኾነ ንሴፍቲ ቴስት ዝገበርናዮ የለን ኢሉ መሊስሉ ኣብ ዌብሳይት ናትሎ ከድኩም ክትሪእዎ ትኽእሉ NIH ዝመለሶ ካልኣይ ድማ እዚ ሮበርት ኬነዲ ዝበሎ ዘረባ ንነዊሕ እዋን ተዛሪብዎ መፅሓፍ ፅሒፍ ኣሎ ሓቂ እንደዘለዎም ቀደም ከሲሶም ኣብ ቤት ፍርዲ መወሰድዎ ነይሮም ግን እኹል መረጋገፂ ስለ ዘይብሎም እስቲ መፅሓፍ ናቱ ኣብ ዕዳጋ ኣላ ንሱ ድማ ንፕሬዚደንት ይወዳደር ኣሎ ዘገርም ክዛረብ ሕጂ ፅንሕ ኢልና ንስማዕ እዩ
Who wants to read that can go to to the Children's Health Defense website and you can read HHS's admission that not a single one has ever been safety tested pre-licensing. Now, what I've said is other medicines are required to do that. And we should have to do that for vaccines. If I'm wrong, show me the test, show me the study. You won't be able to because there are none. That means that we don't know what the long-term risks are, the risk profile of those products. And I'll give you you mentioned chickenpox. So when CDC was thinking of recommending this chickenpox vaccine as mandating for children, they did a study, and the scientist they hired to do that study was a scientist called Gary Goldman, a contract scientist. And he did the study in an isolated place in California called Antelope Valley, a long-term study. And what they find is if you give the chickenpox vaccine, mass vaccinate with chickenpox, it stops chickenpox, but it causes shingles epidemics later on, which are 20 times as deadly as chickenpox. So if you go, nevertheless.
ሓንቲ ህያው ኣብነት ይበሎ እዚ ሴፍቲ ቴስት ከም ዝተገበረ ኣብቲ ክታበታት መረጋገፂ እንተለካ ሒዝካ ቅረብ ኢሉ ይዛረበሎ እዞም ዝቐርቦ የብሉን ክሳብ መወዳእታ ክንሪኦ ስለ ዝኾነ ካልኣይ ኣብነት ይብዎ ናይ ቺክን ፖክስ ዝበሃል ክታበት መፅናዕቲ ኣብ ዝገብርሉ ዝነበሩ ኣብ ካሊፎርኒያ ብሓደ ቦታ ሓደ ዶክተር ንዑ ሓላፍነቱ ወሲዱ ዝሰርሕ ዝነበረ እቲ ዝሃቦ ክታበት ኢሉ ነቲ ቺክን ፖክስ ዝበሃል ጠጠው ከብሎ ይኽእል ኢሉ the same ክታበት ግን ኣብ ንውሕ ዝበለ ዓመታት ካልእ ሕማም ካብቲ ቺክን ፖክስ ዝበሃል ዕስራ ዕፅፊ ሓደገኛ ዝኾነ ከስዕብ ይኽእል ንሕና ንብሎ ዘለና ድማ እቲ ክታበታት ነቲ ዝወሃቦ ዘሎ ሕማማት ጠጠው ኣየብሎ ኣይኮንኩን ዝብል ዘለኹ ይብላ ኣሎ ሎንግ ተርም ኢፌክት ናይ ንውሕ ኢፌክት ናቱ ካልኦት ሕማማት ወይ ከዓ ነቲ ስርዓተ ምክልኻል ናይ ኣካላትና ብኸመይ ክፀልዎ ክእል ነዚ ዝገልፅ ሓበሬታ ነዚ ዝገልፅ ሪሰርች ኣይተኻየደን እቲ ዕላማ ድማ ክካየድ ስለ ዘይተደልየ እዩ ፅንሒ ኢሉ ክብላ እዩ ንስማዕ እዩ
Despite those studies, we mandated for American children in this country. In Europe, they don't. If you go to the British National Health Service website right now, you can read on that where they say, we do not recommend chickenpox vaccines because it causes shingles epidemics later on. And that's the problem. You can't just look at...
ኣብዚ ድማ ህያው ኣብነት ናይዚ ቺክን ፖክስ ዝበሃል ሕማም ክታበት ዓዲ እንግሊዝ እንድሕር ከይድና ሚኒስትር ጥዕና ናይ ዓዲ እንግሊዝ ከም ክታበት ኣይሂቦን እዩ ምክንያቱ ኣብቲ ዌብሳይቶም ተፅሒፎም ኣሎ ብላ ኣሎ እዚ ክታበት እዚ ንቺክን ፖክስ እንድሕሪድናዮ ኣብ ሎንግ ተርም እቲ ካልእ ፀገም ከስዕብ ስለ ዝኽእል ኢሎም ኣይህብዎን እዮም ሪኮሜንድ እውን ኣይንገብሮና ይብሉ ኣብ ኣሜሪካ ግን እዚ ክታበት እዚ ይወሃብ ኣሎ ኣብ ኣፍሪካ ከንታይ ይግበር ኣሎ ፅንሒ ኢሉ ክዛረበና እዩ እቲ ዝገደደ
You can say that this product is going to prevent this particular disease, but you have to look at the long-term impacts. Vaccines, like other medicines, have injuries that have long diagnostic horizons and long incubation periods that if you do not do long-term studies on placebo-controlled studies comparing vaccinated populations to unvaccinated populations, you won't do it. Let me just give you one quick other example. The most popular vaccine in the world is the DTP vaccine, diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. We banned it, we got rid of it in this country because it was causing injuries, brain injuries, severe brain injuries, or death to 1 in every 300.
እዛ ዘረባ ፅቡቅ ጌርኩም ተረድዋ እቲ ሎንግ ተርም ኢፌክት ናይቶም ክታበታት ወይ ከዓ ኣብ ነዊሕ እንታይ ሰዓበን ከም ፅቕሉ ፀገም ከም ዘለዎም ይፍለጥ ግን መፅናዕቲ ክግበረሎም ኣይከኣለን ፅንሕ ብላ ኣሎ ሓደ ካብቲ ዝለዓለ ውሩይ ዝነበረ ክታበት ጠቂስልና ኣሎ እዚ ክታበት እዚ ኣብ ኣሜሪካ ይወሃብ ነይሩ ድሓር ግን ሓደገኛ ምዃኑ ፈሊጦም ንጥዕና ሓደገኛ ምዃኑ ፈሊጦም ቢልጌትስን መሻርክቱን እንታይ ገይሮም ኣብ ኣፍሪካ ሕጂ ቀስ ኢልኩም ስምዑ ዋላ ደጋጊምኩም ሰለስተ ግዜ ስምዑዋ እዚ ድማ ብተደጋጋሚ ዝበሎ እዩ ኣብ ግልፂ ህዝቢ ድማ ይዛረቦ ዘሎ ብሕቡእ ዝወፅእ ኣይኮነን
children. We used it in the 80s, and that's why there was all this litigation against vaccine companies that precipitated the passage of the Vaccine Act that then gave them immunity from liability. But in Europe, they don't use it. In America, they don't use it. But we give it to 161 million African children a year. So Bill Gates asked the Danish government to support that program and said it saved 30 million lives. The Danish government said, show us the data. He wasn't able to. So they went to Africa and did their own studies. And they looked at 30 years of DTP data. And what they found shocked them all. They found that girls who got the DTP were dying at 10 times the rate of unvaccinated girls. But they
እንታይ ይብላ ኣሎ ኣብዛ ኣገዳሲ ሓበሬታ እዩ እቲ ናይ ዲቲፒ ዝበሃል ክታበት ዝነበረ እዩ ኣብ ኣሜሪካ ሓደገኛ ኮይኑ ምስ ረኸብዎ ኣልዮም ካልእ ድማ ኣብ 80ታት ሓደ ሕጊ ኣታታት እዮም እዘን ካምፓኒታት ናይ መድሃኒት ብክታበት ዝመፅእ ሳዕቤን ክሕተታሉ ከም ዘይብለን ስለዚ ቫክሲን ኣክት ዝበሃል ማለት እዩ እዚ ድማ ንዓታቶም እቲ ዝመፅእ ሳዕቤን ብዝያዳ ክኽስሶም ኣይክእልኒ ማለት እዩ ከምቲ ዝድለ ከም ብሓፈሻ ግን ክንሪኦ ከለና እዚ ክታበት እዚ ኣብ ኣሜሪካ ናብ ኤውሮፓን ተጠባቢሎሞ ናብ ኣፍሪካ ግን ንሚልዮናት ሰባት ሂቦሞ ንሚልዮናት ህፃናት ሂቦሞም ሽዑ ምስ ናይ ሆላንድ ኦርጋናይዜሽን ቢልጌት ብሓደ ኮይኖም እዮም ነቲ ፕሮግራም ዝገብርዎ ነይሮም ቢልጌትስ ብዙሕ ግዜ ኣብ ዘረቡ ሚልዮናት ቆልዑ ኣብ ኣፍሪካ በሰንኪ እዚ ክታበት ካብ ሕማም ከም ዝደሓኑ ዝገልፅ እቶም ናይ ሆላንድ ኦርጋናይዜሽን ግን ጭብጢ ሃበና ከምኡ ከም ዝኾነ መረጋገፂ ሃበና ኢሎሞ ክህቦም ኣይከኣለን ባዕሎም ንሶም ከይዶም መፅናዕቲ ምስ ገበሩ ካብቶም ክታበት ዝወሰዱ ምስ ረኣይዎም እቶም ነቲ ክታበት ዝወሰዱን ዘይወሰዱ ምስ ኣወዳደሮም እቶም ክታበት ዝወሰዱ ብብዝሒ 10 ዕፅፊ ናይ ሞት ዕድል ብኣደዳ ዝተፈላለዩ ሕማማት ክሞቱ ተራእዮም ብትኽክል እቲ ቫክሲን ኣይኮነን ዕሚምዎም ወይ ንሱ ብትኽክል እቲ ቫክሲን እዩ ነቲ ሕማም ኣብፅሒዎም ክብል ኣይክእልኒ ይብላ ኣሎ ምክንያቱ ኣሶሲዬሽንን ካውዜሽን ዝበሃል ፍልይ ስለ ዘሎ እንተኾነ ከምዚ ዓይነት ትሬንድ እንተሪኢኻ መፅናዕቲ ክትገብረሉ ኣለካ ዶ የስ ሕጂ ስምዕዎ እንታይ ከም ዝብል
They were dying of things that nobody had ever associated with the vaccine. They were dying of diphtheria, of anemia, malaria, bilharzia, pulmonary disease, respiratory disease, and pneumonia. And nobody noticed for 30 years that it was the vaccinated girls and not the unvaccinated girls who were dying. And what had happened is these girls were not dying of diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. The vaccine had protected them against those. But it had also ruined their immune systems. And they were unable to defend themselves against other just minor diseases that other kids who had hardy immune systems were able to fend off. So that's why you need these long-term studies. And that's why I'm worried that we don't do that here in the United States.
So እቲ ቫክሲን እቲ ክታበት ዝወሰድዎ ብቐጥታ ሕሚምዎምን ቀቲልዎምን ክንብል ኣይንኽእልኒና እቶም ዝተኸተባን ዘይተኸተቡን ምስ ኣወዳደርናዮም ግን እቶም ዝተኸተቡ ብካልኦት ሕማማት ከም በዓል ዓሶን ካልኦት ሕማማትን እዮም ክሞቱ ተራእዮም እቲ ዕላማ እቲ ፀገም ድማ ኢሉ እቲ ዝወሰድዎ ክታበት ነቲ ቀጥታ ሕማም ይከላኸሎ እዩ እቲ ስርዓተ ምክልኻል ናይ ኣካላት ስለዝሃሲ ግን ብካልኦት ሕማማት ግዳይ ናይ ምዃን ተኽእሎ ኣለዎ እናበለ ይኸይድ ኣሎ ነዋሕ ቪድዮ ክትከውን ክሳብ መወዳእታ ተፀሚንኩም ትስምዑዋ ነዚ እሱ ዝብሎ ጥራይ ኣይኮነን ብካልእ መንገድኻ ክንሪኦ ኢና
And we do have evidence of that, like there are clinical trials, randomized trial, and there's a difference between association and causation, right? Somebody can take a medication and get involved in a motor vehicle accident. It doesn't mean that, that is associated, but it was not caused by medication unless we get to the bottom of it. So many times we should continue to figure out ways to, for the safety of vaccines, of course, and medical community is always looking for that. But at the same time, like we can really come to agreement that vaccines are important. They do prevent those diseases. After all, smallpox was in the world.
So in general, እንታይ ብሎ ኣሎ እዚ ዶክተር ማለት እዩ just association and causation ፍልይ ኣለዎ እዩ ሓደ ሰብ መድሃኒት ወሲዱ ብመኪናን ተሃሪማቶት መድሃኒት ገይርዎ ዲ መድሃኒት ፅዋ ነይርዎ ዳ ይብሉን ቀጥታ እቲ መድሃኒት እዩ ንዑ ከምኡ ገይርዎ ክትብል ኣይትኽእልኒ ኢኻ መፅናዕቲ ክትገብረሉ ክትክእል ኣለካ ንውሕስነት የስ ኣነ ምሳኻ ሰማየ ውሽጣት ኢና ሳዕቤናት ንምንታይ እዩ እንታይ ትፀገም ናይ ዝሞት መፅናዕቲ ክግበረሉ ኣለዎ ብሓፈሻ ግን ክታበታት ፅቡቃት እዮም እዩ ዝብል ዘለቲ ዶክተር ማለት እዩ
all around the world. It's not there anymore. So there is evidence of that.
And then there's diseases, when we pass a vaccine act, when I was a kid, there was only 3 vaccines. I was compliant. But when we passed the vaccine act, it made vaccines very, very valuable. And all of a sudden there was a gold rush to add a lot of new vaccines to the schedule for diseases that aren't even casually contagious, like rotavirus, like hepatitis B. Why are we giving hepatitis B vaccine to a 1-day-old child? Hepatitis B, the major vectors for that are it's sexually transmitted or by needles. Why would you give?
እንታይ ይብላ ኣሎ please ተረድዎ this is very very important information ኣብቲ 80ታት ቫክሲን ኣክት ዝበሃል ከይተመሓላለፈ ከሎ 3 ክታበታት ጥራዮም ዝውሃብ ነይሮም ነቶም ቆልዑ ማለት እዩ ሎሚ 72 ኣብ ኣሜሪካ ይብላ ኣሎ ስለምንታይ ከምኡ ኮይኑ ድሕርቲ ናይ ቫክሲን ኣክት እንታይ ማለት እዩ እተን ካምፓኒታት ብሰንኪቲ ክታበት ዝመፅእ ሳዕቤን ተሓተቲ ክኾና ኣይከላንን ወይ ንኩሉ ለየብሊት ነቲ ዝመፅእ ዕንወት ካሓሳክብ ኣይከላንን ንከምኡ ዝሕግዝ እቲ ኣክት ነይሩ ድሕሪኡ ዝበለፀ ሞቲቬሽን ኣለዎን ምክንያቱ ብዙሕ መክሰብ ስለ ዘለዎ ካምፓኒታት ተጓየን ብዙሕ ክታበታት ክገብራ ጀሚረን ንኣብነት ካብኡ እቲ ሂፓቲቲስ ቢ ዝበሃል ቀንዲ መመሓላለፍናቱ ብፆታዊ ርክብን ብስሪንጋ ዝመፅእ ደምን እዩ ዝመሓላለፍ ንወዲ ሓደ ዓመት ከመይ ገይሩ እዩ እዚ ክታበት እዚ ዝምልከቶን ዘድልዮን እናበለ ኣገዳሲ ሕቶ ይሓትት ኣሎ ስለዚ እቶም ክታበታት ሓደ ብሓደ እዩ ዝማጎተሎም ዘሎ
That one-day-old trial, it's really a profit motive. Now, you're right. That correlation is not causation, but the Institute of Medicine has looked at the vaccine schedule and said in their 2011 report, there are over 150 injuries that are likely to be associated with vaccines that have never been studied. So it's the CDC's responsibility to do those studies, and they've been ordered again and again and again to do them, and they have refused. And that's wrong. We need.
So again, Taiblalo, እቲ ክታበታት ፀገም ከም ዘምፅእ ድሮ ይፈልጡ ነይሮም እዮም ልዕሊ 100 ሽሕ ዝኸውን ኬይዝስ ኣጋጢምዎም እቲ ክታበት ፀገም ከም ዝፈጥር እቲ CDC ዝበሃል ድማ ነዚ ሓበሬታ ወሲዱ መፅናዕቲ ክገብር ነይሩ ኣብ ሎንግ ተርም እንታይ ፀገም ከምፅእ ክእል እዚ ክታበታት ኢሉ ክገብሮ ይኽእል ነይሩ ግን ክገብሩ ኣይደለየን ብተደጋጋሚ ምሳሓተተ እውን ነፂግዎ ክገብርዎ ይደልዩን ምክንያቱ እንታይ እቲ ምክንያት CDC ይኹን ካልኦት ትካላት بقلت حج خزاربا ميو بسنك زيادة ما حدا قا خورد خمس خيل أبتحري لنا خنرينا.
You need an agency that is putting public health first and not pharmaceutical profits. You were talking about the opioid crisis. The opioid crisis, started with the oxycodone. Now it's fentanyl. But the same companies that got the FDA to lie to us about the addictiveness, lie to every doctor in this country about the addictiveness of oxycodone and get a whole generation addicted. Those are the same companies that make these, other products. And the 4 companies that make vaccines in this country, Merck, Sanofi, Glaxo, and Pfizer, have paid over $35 billion in criminal penalties over the past decade for lying to doctors, for falsifying science, for defrauding regulators. And we need to keep an eye on them. We can't just trust them if they say it's a vaccine,
ናይ ብሓቂ ዘገርም ዘረባ እዩ ዝዛረብ ዘሎ I hope ደጋጊምኩም ክሰምዑዋ እንታይ ይብላ ኣሎ እቲ ኩነታት ናይ ክታበታት ወላ እንተሪናያ ዝናብነት እጅ ኦፒዮይድ እዚ ናይ ሓሽሽ ኩነታት ኣብ ኣሜሪካ ዘሎ እንተሪናዮ ወይ ድማ ብሓፈሻ ቃላት ክጠቅስ ኣይክልኒ ፀገሙ ከምፅ ስለዝኽእል in general እንታይ ይብላ ኣሎ እቲ ናይ ፋርማሲቲካል ካምፓኒስ ወይ ከናይ መድሃኒት ካምፓኒታት በተደጋጋሚ ከም ዝሕሱ ኬዝ ኣፍተር ኬዝ ሪና ይሕሱ ጥራይ ደይኮኑስ ነቲ ሜዲካል ፊልድ ድማ ነቶም ደኳትር ከም ዝሕሱ ከም ዝገብርዎም ወይ ከም ዝጋገዩ ከም ዝገብርዎም ኬዝ ኣፍተር ኬዝ ሪና ኣለና ከምኡ ከም ዝገብሩ ኣብ ዝሓለፈ ዓመታት ተሪና ልዕሊ 35 ቢልዮን ናይቲ ዝገበርዎ ገበን መቕፃዕቲ ከፊሎም እዮም ዞም ካምፓኒታት ብፍላይ ኣርባዕተ ዝለዓለ ናይ ክታበት ሓይሊ ዘለዎን ወይ ኣፍሬት ማለት እዩ ስለዚ ሓድሽ ኣይኮነን ከም ዝገይሮም መደናገሩ ክገብሩ ምን ደኳትር ብገንዘብ ከም ዘስድዑ ካልእ ነገር ነቲ ሳይንስ ክጠዋዊ ከም ዝፍትኑ እኹል መረጋገፅን ጭብጥን ኣለናዩ ሓድሽ ተርእዮ ኣይኮነን ዞም ትካላት ነቲ ሳይንስ ክፀልዎም ፍታኖም እናበለ ይዛረብ ኣሎ ደጋጊምኩም ዋላ ስምዕዎ ፅቡቅ ጌር ክርዳእኩም ኣሎ ምክንያቱ እዚ ሓበሬታ እዚ ንነዊሕ እዋን ተዓፊኑ ዝነበረ እዩ
we all trust it. We need to have actual science on it. And I think that's all I say. I don't want to get rid of vaccines. If you want to take a vaccine, you should be able to do it. But we need good science. And that's all I've asked for.
But so what do you say to people? I mean, it sounds like you're saying that every scientist, every government, our governments around the world, doctors like Dr. Butts are all lying about vaccines.
I've never said anything like that.
تزرب عراي وقدامي نقدر تريجرت كوينا لا تسزبلو زلو ترى بيلوالو هناتو I don't know انت تبلو لا بس خاطب له زلخا انت خوينو كل ساينتست كل دكتور كله حساوي خاطب لهم زلخا تبلو لا عبي كليميزي انا ولا حنت هيبلكون انا نفاكسين وين كتابت يدقفون يا ابن لوني راي وحسنتون زترغاغته برتع زباله مزنعت لك كم كالوت حمامات كالوت مدهانيتات ننوح انتاي افكت كلهم الله مزنعت يجبر لهم كم كجبر لهم بخوم عينه بروسس حلف له بحلايه يبلا له كتعجن كرسني رايوه
AMA the American Academy of Pediatrics they all and the FDA says, and in fact, on its website, you can clearly see vaccines they go through 3 stages of FDA testing against double-blind placebos. They already do that testing for vaccines.
Elizabeth, you can say that. I'm telling you.
I'm not saying that. The FDA,
No, the FDA is not saying that.
Yes,
because
they do on their website.
They will not tell you that that there's any vaccine that has ever undergone a long-term placebo-controlled trial prior to licensure. They will not, because it's not true. And you can go to my website and see where HHS says, yeah, there are none.
Well, we have competing websites saying different things.
ኣብቲ ናይ FDA ዌብሳይት እቲ ክታበታት 3 ዓይነት ትራየል ሓሊፉ ብቅዓቱን ጥዕንኡን ውሕስነቱን ዝተረጋገፀ ምዃኑ ኩሎም እቶም ትካላት ናይ መንግስቲ ይገልጹ እዮም። ኣይብሉን እዮም ካብ ይብላለሱ ኣይብሉን እዮም ምክንያቱ ቴናይጅ ዝበሃል ብግልፂ ከም ዘይገብሩ ሓቢሮም እዮም። ስለዚ ይከራኸሩ ኣለዉ እቲ ሓበሬታ ኣሎ። እዚ ሓበሬታ እዚ ፓብሊክ ሓበሬታ እዩ። ናይ ብሓቂ ዝሕስ እንተሎ ቀደም ኣብ ቤት ፍርዲ በፂሑ ኣሎ። ምክንያቱ መጀመርዩ ይኮነን ኬዝ ኣፍተር ኬዝ ይኹም ዝብል ዘሎ ክንሪኦ ኢና ፅንሒልና እውን ሕጂ ስምዕዎ እንታይ ክብል ምዃኑ ኣብ ኣሜሪካ ኣብቲ ናይ ጥዕና ክሳብ ክንደይ ብውሽጢ ዝስራሕ ከም ዘሎ ሕጂ ክዛረብ እዩ። ትብዓት ኣብዚ ሰብኣይ ዘሎ ንበይኒ እዩ።
I'm not saying the AMA is lying or the doctors are lying. What I'm saying is the FDA does lie. And the FDA lied to us about Vioxx. They knew that the Vioxx was causing heart attacks, but they let doctors believe.
زي بلت بقلت زبالكو እቲ FDA ዝበሃል Food and Drug Association ናይ ኣሜሪካ ትዝለዓለ ትካል ንሓደ መድሃኒት ዝጥዑዩ ኢሉ ከም መድሃኒት ዝኸውን ዝገብሮ ላይሰንስ ዝቦ FDA ዝበሃል ንሱ ይሕሱ ይቅድሚ ሕጂ ብዙሕ ግዜ ሓሲና እዩ ብግልፂ ኣብ ሚድያ ይዛረብ ዘሎ። This is a big ሓበሬታ እዩ። ምክንያቱ መብዛሕቲ ግዜ FDA ዝበሎ ዝግበሎ ዝዓይነቱ እዩ ከም ዝሕሱ እውን ብተደጋጋሚ ከም ዝጋገዩ ድማ ብህያው ኣብነት በዚ ቫይክስ ዝበሃል ኣብነት ሂቡ የረዳእ ኣሎ ማለት እዩ።
Believe that it was a medicine that was good, beneficial for headaches and arthritis without telling it that they were going to kill me. And they ended up killing between 120,000 and 500,000.
All these doctors and all these scientists around the world who say vaccines are safe and have saved millions and millions of lives.
The same people said Vioxx was safe. The same people said opioids, that oxycodone was not addictive because FDA said it and they believe them. And that's the problem. We have a corrupt federal agency that's lying to the AMA, to all of those agencies and all of the doctors, and they believe them. But those agencies are controlled by pharma. That is the problem. And that's what I'm trying to end as president.
ተዛረባ ሰሚዕኩም ዶ? እዚኦም ትካላት እዚኣቶም ብብልሽውና ዝተቆማጥዑ እዮም። በቶም ናይ መድሃኒት ትካላታት እዮም ዝቁፀሩን እሳቶም እዮም ዝያዳ ዝፀልዎምን ኣነ ፕሬዚደንት ኮይነ ድማ ነዚ ክቅይሮ ክቃለስ ይብላ ኣሎ። እዚ ኣብ ወላ ሚሊታር ኣንፃር CIA ዝዛረበውን ክንሰመይና እዚ ፕሬዚደንት እዚ ሮበርት ጄ ኬነዲ it's really ተዓልዒልዎ ዘሎ ቶፒክ ኣዝዩ ዓበይቲ እዩ። ኣምላኽ ይሓልዎ ጥራይኻ ትብል ትኽእል ሕጂ ንሱ ስለ ዝበለ ጥራይ ኣምፅአኩም ኣለኹን ዝተፈላለዩ ንዕኡ ዝከራኸሩ ሓንቲ ከስማዓኩም እንታን ንኽርዳእና ብዛዕባ እንታይ ንዛረብ ከም ዘለና this is very important ኣብዚ ቀረባ ቫይራል ኮይኑ ዝነበረ መልእኽቲ ክንርኢ ኢና።
Challenging a vaccine. Joe Rogan is challenging a vaccine expert to take on an anti-vaxxer. Here's everything we know about the proposal that has high-profile names sounding off on Twitter. Joe Rogan offered a leading vaccine scientist, Dr. Peter Hotez.
ኣብዚ ዝሓለፈ እዋን ኣዝዩ ኣዛራቢ ኮይኑ ዝነበረ ኬስ ክንርኢ ኢና። ጆ ሮገን ዝበሃል ኣብ ስፖቲፋይ ዓብዪ ፕላትፎርም ዘለዎ ፖድካስት ማለት እዩ ነዚ ሮበርት ኤፍ ኬነዲ ዓዲሞ ነይሩ። ዓዲሙ ድማ እንታይ ኢሉ ነዚ ክማጎት ዝኽእል እዚ እትሪእዎ ዘለኹም ሓደ ካብቶም ዝዓበዩ ሳይንቲስትስ ብዛዕባ ክታበት እዩ ዶክተር ሆቴስ ዝበሃል ማለት እዩ። ንዑ ሕጂ ከምኡ ኢሉ ፖስት ምስ ገበረ እዚ ዶክተር ሆቴስ ኣብ ትዊተር ፅሒፉ ስፖቲፋይን ጆ ሮገንን እዚ ብዛዕባ ኣንጻር ክታበታት ዝዝረብ ዘሎ ክቋፀርዎ ኣለዎም ኢሉ ምስ ተዛረበ እቲ ጆ ሮገን ዝበሃል እንታይ ኢሉ ፅሒፍሉ እንስኻ ሓላፊ ክኢላ ናይ ክታበታት ክሳብ ዝኾንካ ከም ምዃንካ መጠን መፂኻ እንዳ ፕላትፎርም ናተይ ዲቤት ግበሮ ተማጎቶ የእምኖ ኣብ ናተይ ዲቤት ኣብ ናተይ ሾው መፂኻ ምሱ መጎት እንተጌርካ $100,000 ኣብ ንስኻ ዝደለኻዮ ግብረ ሰናይ ትካል ቻሪቲ ክኸፍል እየ ኢልዎ። እታ ንሱ ዝበላ የስ ንዓ መጎቶ ዝበሉ ሕጂ ስምዕዎ ክንደይ ሰባት ክንደይ ገንዘብ ኣበርኪቶም ኣለዉ ንኽማጎቱ ማለት እዩ።
$100,000 to the charity of his choice if he takes on Democratic presidential candidate and anti-vaxxer Robert J. Kennedy Jr. Kennedy has repeatedly endorsed a theory that vaccines cause autism. Hotez has declined on the debate invitation, but has offered to go on the show to talk about vaccines. And now billionaires Elon Musk and Mark Cuban are chiming in. Elon Musk saying the doctor is afraid of debate, and Mark Cuban saying
So in general እቲ ዘረባ መብርህ ክኾነኩም እታ መጎት ክሳብ ክንደይ ኣገዳሲት ከም ዝኾነት ኣብዚኣ ንርኣያ ክኢላታት ክርእይዋ ከለዉ
This debate on Twitter, Joe Rogan offering vaccine scientist Peter Hotez to debate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I mean, it started with $100,000. The pot has grown to $1.5 million. Dr. Hotez running to MSNBC, of course, where the anchor there said, you can't debate with conspiracy theorists. I want to play a clip for you, and then we can talk about this.
That's happened to me again and again and again and again. I agree to debates. And it seems like somebody gets a message, but, you know, who knows? It's obscure. But nobody in 18 years has been willing to debate me.
ሰሚዕኩም ዶ እንታይ ኢሉ ኣነ ብዛዕባ እዚ ናይ ክታበት ዘለኒ ርዲትን ሓሳብን እቶም ንክታበት ዝኣምንሉ ፅቡቕ እዩ ዝብሉ መፂኦም ምሳይ ክማጎቱንን ክእምኖምን ዲቤት ክንገብር ን18 ዓመት ፅዒረ ዝመፅእ ሰብ የለን ሕራ ይብሉ መን ከም ዝረኽቦም ግን ኣይፈልጥን እየ መፂኦም ክዛረበ ይክእሉን እዮም ከምዚ ይብል ነይሩ ቀደም RFK ኣብዚ ዋን እዚ ግን ኣብ ቅድሚ ህዝቢ ዝተኻየደ መጎት ማለት እዩ ክሳብ ክንደይ ገንዘብ ከም ዝተገበረ ህያው ኣብነት ከርእየኩም እየ ክምለሳይ ናዛ ዘረባ እዚኣ ስለምንታይ ከማ ከም ዝኾነት እቲ መጎት ክሳብ ክንደይ ክምግትዎ ዝኽእሉ ሰባት ከም ተሳኑ just give me 1 second if I find the video ኣሽሓት ገንዘብ offers ተዋህበሉ ቦታ ምዃኑ ክንፈልጥ ኢለ let's have this one I'll bring it to you ሓደ ካብቲ offers ማለት እዩ
$500,000 offer that, if accepted, will make huge waves all around the world. Let me elaborate on what I mean. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the nephew of John F. Kennedy, just recently went on the Joe Rogan podcast, and he said a lot of things that may be characterized as so-called vaccine misinformation. There's this famous professor named Dr. Peter Hotez, and he said Spotify has stopped even sort of trying to stem Joe Rogan's vaccine misinformation. It's truly awful. And that's when Joe Rogan replied with a beautiful response. And he said, Peter, if you claim what RFK Jr. is saying is misinformation, I am offering you $100,000 to the charity of your choice if you're willing to debate him on my show with no time limit. Ever since Joe Rogan announced that, the pot has grown tremendously. It went from $100,000 to $2.6 million, with other people coming in and offering cash in that pot for Peter to come on to Joe Rogan's podcast and actually debate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. with no time limit. Bill Ackman gave $150,000. Dave Rubin gave $100,000. Patrick Bet-David pledged $100,000. And even Andrew Tate pledged $500,000. So the pot is now $2.6 million. But it's about to reach.
ከም ዝራኹሞ ነቲ ዲስካሽን ኣብ መንጎቲ ዝለዓለ ዶክተር ናይ ቫክሲን ዝተባህለ ፕሮፌሰርን ኣብ መንጎ RFK-ን ንክካየድ መብዛሕቶም ዓበይቲ ክኢላታት ኣሽሓት ገንዘብ ኣብ ቻሪቲ ንክኸይድ ኢሎሞ ናይ ብሓቂ እንድሕርቲ ንክታበት ዝድግፍ ኮንሰፕት እንተዝህልዎም ነይሩ ሓቀኛ ጭብጢ ዘለዎ ሓበሬታ እንተዝህልዎም ነይሩ ኣብ ቅድሚ ህዝቢ መፅኦም ዲቤት ንክገብሩ ፀገማይ ምተፈጠረን ነዚኣ ግን ኣብይዋ እቲ ዶክተር 10 ግዜ ብዛዕባ ክታበት ዝዛረብ ዝነበረ ብዛዕባ እዚኣ ክዛረብ ኣይደለየን እቲ ዶክተር አንተ በንሪዮ ፀናሕና እንታይ ልመልሱ ንስማዕዮ ኣክንዲ ንዕዑ ነቲ ዲቤት ዝካትዑ ግን እንታይ ዓይነት መልሲ ሂቦም እስከ ንርኢ ኣብዚ
Destroyed. Oh,
no, wait. ኣበያ ፀኒያ ክምለሰኩም ታ ቪድዮ ይብና ፀንሐ
controversial opinions that you have, if you have
trust in.
No, this is not. I think ኣበያ ነራ ተረኺባ ፀኒሐ ግን I couldn't find it. ታን እንተ ረኺበያ ክምለሰኩም
has been willing
to debate.
Can't, in general, debate with conspiracists and loons. You can't debate whether up is down, hot is cold, black is white. They never change their minds, and they win just by you agreeing to share a platform with them. Joining me now is Dr. Peter Hotez himself.
እቲ ኣብ ቅድሚ መፅኡ ክካታዕ ኣብ ኦፕን ፕላትፎርም መፅኡ ክካታዕ ዝተዓደመ ኣብዩ ኣብ ቲቪ ቶም ዝድግፍዎ ኸይዱ ዝተዛረቦ ክንሪና ጽንሕ ኢሎም ግን ቶም ዘኳትርታ ይክብልዎ ይምስማ
Thank you for coming back on the show. It's a shame it's under these circumstances.
So what do you make about all of this? First, nobody wants to debate RFK Jr., and then you have Hotez running to MSNBC. I mean, what's wrong with a healthy debate?
Well, you know, debate is really a part of scientific advancement. I communicate with Joe Rogan over the weekend. Remember, I had been on his show in 2021. I set all the records for views there. I have more.
እዚ ትሪዎ ዘለኹም ካርዲዮሎጂስት ሓደ ካብቶም ዓበይቲ ካብ መጀመሪኡ እውን ብዛዕባ ክታበታት ብዛዕባ ኮቪድ ብዙሕ ዝዛረብ ዝነበረ ዶክተር እዩ ነቲ ዝተገበረ ጌጋ ምዃኑ ኣብ ሳይንስ ዝኣምን ሰብ ኦፕን ዲቤት ኣብ ቅድሚ ህዝቢ መፅኡ ነቲ ዘሎ ፀገም ዲቤት ክትገብሮ ሪሰርች ሳይንስ ማለት እውን ዲቤት ምግባር ማለት እዩ ሓደ ሰብ ዝተፈላለየ ሓበሬታ ሪሰርች ገይሩ መፅናዕቲ ምስ ምፅእ ካልኦት እዮም መፅኦም ፒር ሪቪው ዝበሃል ኣሎ ካልኦት መፅኦም ነቲ ዘቕረበ ሓበሬታ ይበታትንዎን ይርይዎን ናይ ብሓቂ ድዩ ሓቂ ሓሶት ነዚ ድማ ይተኸልኪሉ ዘሎ ዲቤት ክትገብር ክንዲዚ ሚልዮን ገንዘብ ኣምፅኦም ንዓ ተማጎተና ጌጋ እዩ ነዚ ሓሳዊ ትብልዎ እንተኮይንኩም ሓሳዊ እንደበልዎ የእምኑና ድማ ይብላሉ ህዝቢ መፅኡ ክእምን ዝኽእል ካብቲ ወገን ክታበታት ግን የለን እዚና ንርኢ ዘለና
Citations in the National Library of Medicine, then Hotez. I'm a bit senior to him academically, but I'd be happy to go on Rogan with Hotez and just sit down as two academic doctors and review the safety data on the vaccine.
እዚ ዶክተር እዚ ከም ብሓይኒ ሳይንስ ክንሪኦ ከለና ልዕሊ እቲ ዶክተር ሆቴዝ ዝበሃል ፓብሊሽ ዝገበርኩን ሳይትድ ዝኾንኩን እየ ስለዚ ልክዕ ዶክተር ኣብ ጆ ሮገን መፅየ ክማጎ ተኽእል እየ ምክንያቱ ክታበት ጌጋይ ካብ ዝብል እዩ እዚ ዶክተር ማለት እዩ ስለዚ ዶክተር ሳይንስ ንሳይንስ ክንገጥም ንኽእል ኢና ግን እዚ ኣየፍቅዱን እዮም ዘለው ይብል ኣሎ ጽንዕ ኢልና እዚ ካበይ ኣምፅኡ ዝዛረቦ ዘሎ ብዛዕባ ክታበታት እስከ ቁርብ ንዛረብ ክንሪኦ እቲ ተመክሮናቱ ኣብ ዝተፈላለየ መድረኽ ንዝተዛረቦ ካልእ ድማ ነዚያ ክንርኢና ሕጂ ቅድሚና ኣብ ካልእ ምኻድና ክታበታት ካልኦት ደኳትርታ ይብልዎ
people are like totally unvaccinated. Is that like where do you find? Is it just the parents that stepped up and said? I would think that's a very small percentage because so many of us blindly followed, you know.
ገለ ሰባት ዘይክተብለው እስከ ብዛዕባ እዚኦም ሓበሬታ ሃበና እዮም ዝብሉ ዘለው እንታይ ዓይነት ናይ ጥዕና ፀገም የጋጥሞም ወይ ጥዕናኦም ከመይ ይኾኑ እቶም ከይተኸተቡ ዝኸዱ ብዛዕባኦም ክዛረብ እዩ ሕጂ
The recommendations to vaccinate children.
Yeah, it's less than 1% of the public. So the Amish are a perfect example.
ሓደ ፐርሰንት ናይቲ ህዝቢ እዩ ዘይክተብ ኣይልዎ ዝበዝሐ ሰብ ነቲ ዝፀንሖ ሒዝዎ ዝኸይድ ይኽተብ እዩ ዝበዝሐ ኢሉ 1% ግን ዘይክተብለው ነቶም ዘይክተቡ አሚሽ ፒፕል ዝበሃሉ ኣብ ኣሜሪካ ካብ ስዊዝ ዝበቆሉ ዘርኢ ኣብኡ ዝቕመጡ ኣብ ሓደ ቦታ ማለት እዩ ዝኾነ ቴክኖሎጂ ቅበሉን እዮም ክታበቱ ናይ ወስዱን እዮም ኣብኦም ዝተኻየደ ሪሰርች ግን እጅግ ነገርና
of a large group of people who are largely unvaccinated and there's no we can't find an autistic kid who was unvaccinated. It's very, very rare in the Amish community, very, very rare. You won't find kids with ADD, with autoimmune disease, with panda pans, with epilepsy. You just don't find any of these chronic diseases in the Amish. And you know, the U.S. government has been studying the Amish for decades, but there's never been a report out to the public. The reason, of course, is it would show that, oh, if you don't follow our guidelines, you're going to end up healthier. That's why there's no report after decades of studying the Amish. There's no report because the report would be devastating. So the Amish are.
سمعتكم تبني سمعكم كنتايلو تم أمش حزب أمش بحلول الله بأمريكا تقللا تنتقلون كاب تكنولوجي كاب كلام بكاروسا يمزخدو كيتكم أمش people لكم تخيتكم كترهبوا ميكم so انتاي بلا له أبزيم سبازياتهم زي أوتيزم زبحال أي رأنيو كالود ما ADD زبحالون كم زي hyper ADD ዝበሃሉ ሕማማት ኣለዉ ናይ ኮንሰንትሬሽን ናይ ኣቓልቦ ሓንጎል ናይ ቆልዑ ኣብ ዝዋን ዝበብዝሕ ዝረአ ማለት እዩ ቆልዑ ኣቓልቦ ከም ዘይብሎም እዚኦም ሕማማት እዚኣቶም እውን ኣብኦም ዳርጋ ይረኣዩን እዮም ይብል ኣሎ መንግስቲ ኣሜሪካ ነዞም ህዝቢ ንነዊሕ እዋን እዩ ዘፅጥዖም ኢሉ ከም መፅናዕቲ ይጥቀመሎም ኣሎ ምክንያቱ ካብቲ ኩሉ ናይ ሳይንስን ናይ ቴክኖሎጂን ዝተኣለዩ ስለ ዝኾኑ እቲ ውፅኢት ግን ክሳብ ሕጂ ንህዝቢ ይንገርኒ ምክንያቱ እቶም ህዝቢ ጥዕናናቶም ዝሓሸ ምዃኑ ብሓጎስን መፅናዕቲ ገይሮም ዝለዓለ ሓጎስ ዘለዎም ህዝቢ ምዃኖም እዩ ዝንገር ኣብ ውሽጢ ኣሜሪካ እዮም ዘለዉ እዚ እውን ሓደ ካብቲ መረጋገፂ ነጥቢ ናይቲ ኩነታት ንብሎ ዘለና ኢና So ካልእ ዝተፈላለዩ ሓበሬታ ክበኩም ክፍትኔ ብዛዕባ ዝኩነታት እቲ ዶክተር ሆት ዝበሃል እስከ ንርአዮ ብዛዕባ ኮቪድ እንታይ ይብል ነይሩ?
Unique. One of the things that we're not hearing a lot about is the unique potential safety problem of coronavirus vaccines.
And then something changed.
Any vaccine released by emergency use authorization by the FDA is an outstanding vaccine.
J&J's vaccine has a risk of life-threatening blood clots.
When you hear the beep, that's the sound.
They're all really good vaccines. Get vaccinated now.
كلهم كتابات ጽቡቓት እዮም ክንክተብ ኣለና እናበለ ነቲ ክታበት ናይ ኮቪድ ዝነበረ ካብቶም ዝለዓለ ኣብ ሚድያ እናመፀ ዝጉዝጉዝ ዝነበረ ዶክተር ግን ንሱ ኣብቲ ግዜ ክሳብ ክንደይ መርገፅታቱ ከም ዝቕይር ዝነበረ ዶክመንት ገይሮም ኣለዉ መጀመርያ ክልተ ክታበታት ክሳብ ክንደይ ኣገደሲ ምዃኖም ክዛረብ እዩ ድሕሪኡ እንታይ ክብል ይስምዕዎ?
You gotta call now.
If you wait, it's going to be really too late to protect your child.
If this was your child, what happens next could make it the worst day of your life.
So even though COVID poses zero threat to healthy children,
vaccinate your children.
Do the right thing.
ولا كوفيد نقولعو تحت زيرو chance 0.00% انتخونه زنبره قولعو كختبو recommend way كازغوزغوز زنبره دكتور.
Be safe and not sorry.
I'm strongly recommending for adolescents to get their 2 doses of vaccine and fully immunized after those 2 doses.
Advanced technology that can help save lives.
This is going to be a long-lasting vaccine. A long-lasting vaccine.
If you
እንታይ ብል ነይሩ ኩሉ ሰብ ኩሉ መንእሰይን ኩሉ ዓብን ክታበት ክወስድ ኣሎ ክልተኻ ክወስድ ኣሎ ሎንግ ላስቲንግ ቫክሲን ንነዊሕ ዝፀንሕ ቫክሲን ነይሩ ሓፂር ግዜ ግን እንታይ መርገፂ ይቀይሩ
moments later
we're seeing that 2 doses is not holding up well for emergency room visits. It's not holding up well for hospitalizations.
Here we go again.
Everyone's going to need a booster. You need that 3rd immunization.
Triple the amount.
Get that 3rd immunization. The 2 mRNA vaccines were always a 3-dose vaccine. The 2 mRNA vaccines were always a 3-dose vaccine. I've always said this is a 3-dose vaccine. I've always said this is a 3-dose vaccine. This is a 3-dose vaccine.
كلتا خولات يم زبل زنبره سلسته مالتي نابل غيروا.
But I'm not done yet.
That 3rd immunization. The problem is it's not holding up. So we may have to look at sort of innovative solutions.
Oh God, not this again.
A 4th immunization, just to keep them going, to keep the country going. We have to consider some out of the box things. A 4th immunization. A 4th immunization. Get that second boost. A second.
رابعي immunization وكالا booster مالتي.
To keep the country going. I've made that recommendation. A 4th immunization.
But I'm still not done.
1 semester later.
Unfortunately, the numbers are starting to trend up again. So the hospitalizations are up. And so the most important message that I have this morning is get your new bivalent booster.
Willie and Lise were saying they got their booster, and I was like, oh, I need to get mine. And then I found out they're talking about the 3rd shot. And is that the bivalent, or is it the 4th booster, or does it matter? Like,
don't worry so much about the number of.
There's no wrong way to use it.
You have to get it. This new bivalent booster.
You can double or triple stack them.
The new bivalent one is doing a much better job. You have to get a booster.
Yeah.
You need to get this new bivalent.
So comes to reward ዘለኹም ይነርቱ ኩነታት ሓንቲ ኣብዚያ ክትፈልጥዋ ዘለኩም ኣብዚ ሮበርት RFK ዝዛረቦ ዘሎ ክሳብ ክንደይ ሓደገኛ ክኸውን ከም ዝኽእል سمعوا واسك بزعبان أمريكا كزارب كله.
Controversial opinions that you have you had anyone debate you publicly about anything?
This is not that one.
In which I have 450 studies that are digested in that book, that I summarize and cite, and 1,400 references. And everybody will say, oh, there's no study that shows autism and vaccines are connected. That's just crazy. That's people or not looking at.
ኣብ መጽሓፍናቱ ብዙሕ ሪሰርች ዝተገበሮ ሓበሬታ ምስ ምሉእ መረጋገጽናቱ ኣውሪድዎ ኣሎ ነፍሲ ወከፍ ሰብ ብግልጽ መጽኡ ዲቤት ክገብሮን ነቲ ሳይንስ ክካተዓሉን እዩ ዝዕድም ዘሎ ስለዚ ብዛዕባ ኦቲዝም ብንጹር ተዛረባ ኣብዚያ ኢና ክንሪኣ
and 1,400 references
1400 references ማለት ዝተፈላለዩ ሪሰርች ዝተካየደ ማለት እዩ
And everybody will say, oh, there's no study that shows autism and vaccines are connected. That's just crazy.
ክታበትን ኦቲዝምን ርክብ የብሎምን ዝብል ድማ መጽናዕቲ ንዑ ዝገልጽ የለን ዝብል ድማ ጌጋ ሓበሬታ ይብላሉ
So that's people who are not looking at science. So anyway,
but they want to say that. They want to say that. It's
well,
like
it's just part of the religion.
Yes,
right.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah,
it really does seem like a religion.
And the heretics have to be burned at the stake.
Yes.
They have to be humiliated,
yes.
silenced, destroyed. Oh, you know, trust the experts is not a function of science. That's the opposite of science. Trusting the experts is a function of religion. It's not and totalitarianism.
Well,
it's not a function of science or democracy. You know, in democracies you question people in authority and
so እንታይ ይብላ ኣሎ
skepticism.
ኣብ ሳይንስ ንኤክስፐርት ኣሚንካ ምኻድ ወይ ከዓ ክኢላታት ኢሎሞ ወይ ገለ ኢሎሞ ተዓሚትካ ምኽታል ሳይንስ ኣይኮነን ይብላ ኣሎ ሳይንስ ንዝመፀካ ሓበሬታ ብጥርጠራሪኻ መረጋገፂ ናቱ በዓልካ ቴስት ክትገብሮ ወይ ከዓ ነፍስኻ ዝኻለ ሪሰርች ክትገብር ኣገዳስነት ኣለዎ ክኢላታት ኢሎሞ እናበልካ ምኻድ ጥራይ ንብዙሓት ሰባት ፀገም ከም ዝፈጥር ምክንያቱ ኣብ ቤት ፍርዲ እንድሕር ኸይድካ ከሳስን ተኸሳስን ብፍላይ ኣብዚ ናይ ፋርማሲውቲካል ናይ መድሃኒታት ቤት ፍርዲ እንተሪኢኹም እቶም زحمام ناتكم حمام النيل كاختم زخلقة كم زحمم زقلتو عبيت إكسبرت خاتغرب الساعتهم دما أي حممني زبل عبيت إكسبرت لذي إكسبرتني إكسبرتي زكاتا إكسبرت أناليسيس بلو بخالا زرار بقى إكسبرت زبهال بجنزب كجزاز خل مخانو نخنفلت يزنقر نازلو إذا حبريتا زون ناتكم خول مزدعات خد قبرولو يزم حتساناكم زلو بزعبا عرف كي عبيت زرباي زلو كالي بزعبا CIA ويكا تنا جباب ناي فارماسيوتيكال كزارب كلنا اسمعيه.
John Kennedy, he refused to go to war, so he was surrounded by military-industrial complex, and he learned very early and.
قدمنا بزيا مخادنا. Maybe there was another one. تزرغباني. It's very difficult.
Nobody will debate.
All these controversial opinions that you have you had anyone debate you publicly about any of these?
Nobody will debate me for 18 years. Nobody will debate me. In fact, I've scheduled many debates.
Take care of your immune system in other ways? Do you take probiotics? Are you cautious about your diet?
I'm not as cautious about my diet as I.
Doctor is the matter professor يزغامت يومس جوروغنا بينو تراخي بنيرو بزع زربات زرب قرب سمعوا جن حنت فيديو سيني هاللغو كم سألكم زلغو I know بزع فيديو تاسل زغربكم كم فيز جراتنا لكن نقطع البزيع كالك قرب لكم كفتني أنا let's listen to this one.
It should be I'm a junk foodaholic actually.
Well, that seems like a terrible thing for your health.
It is a terrible thing for my health and something my wife is working on.
But that seems ridiculous for someone who works with health.
Yeah.
What's going on with you, man?
Sometimes, man, I just don't get it right.
How often?
What?
How often?
How often do I steal a bag of chips or something like that?
How often do you eat garbage?
I don't know. No, hopefully not every day, but you know,
hopefully not every day.
Yeah, maybe a couple of times a week.
Oh.
That's what with Rachel.
أنا كايدا خمسة يبلو تي دكتور ويت بروفيسور قلاوي من رجويو بزعبا هيوتن تايبل أقداسي كوننجن بحفشة منقص أمريكا ويتهم سلها وانتاي كم زقبرونيش حبريتا.
Apparatus that he realized early on that the purpose of the CIA and the intelligence apparatus was to create a constant pipeline of new wars for the military-industrial complex. 3 days before he took the oath of office, Eisenhower, who was the outgoing president, gave what is probably the most important.
أبزا فيديو زي أنتاي زبل زلوا بأمريكا تسياية زبالة سليان أمريكا كأن دسرحناتو دحر وق نمقبار مخانو قدم تحاوبو ناتو أنكلز نبري جون اف كينيدي تستقتل مالتيو مستي CIA عبت أجمع كم زنبرة عبت مقتال ناتو دما CIA إيد كم زنبرة نتي فايل ناتو نخجنس ألون حتيت له مغنياتو I think إن ده دحريون كم تسوى هم زقولوا بزحات كلا تسل نعون سل زحات
speech in American history, which was, you know, where he warned against the military-industrial complex. I was at my uncle's inauguration. I was in Washington that day. He warned against the military-industrial complex. I was at my uncle's inauguration.
زيت جون اف كينيدي بريزنت استقتل
I was in Washington that day. I was a 6-year-old boy. And 2 months later, the military and intelligence came to him and said, we got to invade Cuba. And he was like, I'm not going to Cuba. And he said, the U.S. government can't be doing that. It's not the United States job to dictate what kind of governments other countries have. He said, well, you can't use the U.S. military. And in the middle of it, in the night, they came to him and said, they're getting wiped out on the beach, and you need to send in the military and invade. And he said, we're not going to do it. And he stepped out of that meeting, and he realized they had been lying to him and trying to trick him. And he said, I want to take the CIA and shatter it into 1,000 pieces and
ቀንዲ ካብቲ መቕተሎተ ድማኒ ጆን ኤፍ ኬነዲ ክሕፅር ብዝበለ ስቶሪ ብዙሕ ግዜ ናብ ውግእ ናብ ካለን ክኸይድ ይጠማዝዎ ስለ ዝነበሩ ኣይ ኣምኖምን ነይሩ ነቲ CIA ኣብ መወዳእታ ፋሕብትን ኣቢለ ከም ዝጠፍቕ ገብረ ኢሉ ስለ ዝሓሰበን ከምኡ ምዃኑ ሓሳቡ ምስ ፈለጡ እዩ እቲ ክቐትልዎም
For the next 1,000 days of his presidency, he was at war with his military and intelligence apparatus. They tried to get him to go into Laos. He said no. They tried to get him to go into Vietnam. He refused. Everybody around him wanted him to go into Vietnam. In October of 1963, he heard that some of his Green Berets had been killed over there. And he said, I want a total casualty list from Vietnam. And his aide came to him and said, 75 Americans have died. And he said, that's too many.
ካብቲ ሓሳብ ውፅእ ዝበለ እዩ ግን ክሳብ ክንደይ ዓበይቲ ኣርእስታት ይትንክፍ ከም ዘሎ RFK ኣምላኽ ይሓልዎ ምክንያቱ እዚ ፕሬዚደንት ኮይና ብኣሜሪካ ተመፅኡ ብትክክል ብዙሕ ለውጢ ክመፅእ ከም ዝኽእል ይራየካ ኣብ ብዙሕ ሰብ ድማ ብዙሕ መንእሰይ ይድግፈሎ ኖርማል ዲሞክራቲስ ክውክል ግን ወላ ብሪፐብሊካን ብዙሓት ሰባት ዝድግፍዎ ኣለኹ ኣይ ሆፕ ከምዚ ዝኣመሰሉ መፅኦም ነቲ ዘሎ ሲስተም ኣብ ምቕያር ከበርክቱ እቶም ኣሜሪካ ዘለኹም ድማ ናትኩም መፅናዕቲ ገይርኩም ሪኮመንድ ወይ ኢንዶርስ ገብረልኩም ኣለኹ ናተይ ኢንዶርስመንት ኣይደልዩን ኢኹም ግን ነቲ ሓሳባት ብፅፁይ ርኢኹም ኣብቲ ምርጫ ተራኹም ከተበርክቱ ይምሕፀን እዛ ቪድዮ ነዋሕያ ግን ናትኩም ርእቶ ናትኩም ሓሳባት ካብዚ ዝፍለ ርእቶ ወይ ገለ እንተለኩም بليز أكن حماق صويلكم زربات صحفو نتمرقاقتي لينك دي قلاب تحت قدفو سب كابت كومنت ونسلزم مهار اتعلامة نتنمد نقار نتنمد خاما يكونن حبريتا نافز بن خبات صحيو سو كال حبريتا كابزناتي جيجا انتلو خينو جيجا كل غليو نعوك الرمز غير حبريتا بوست قبارو وقع يكونن وي وددر يكونن زي سو نايلو مار سابز غودي أبكالك سامن الرغب سو تصبقوا مني لكم تشاو
عوت كتكون عوتات تغتل كم زبهال أب كمزي أقداسي كنتات نايكو طباني عالمنا نبعال وورن بافت أب استفل عليه مدرخنا هيوت زرع على عوت كقوانا صفو زخالو نوعهم تتغتلنا كم آتوم نعوت بار وورن بافت نزو كنتات الزنخ قلت أب كمزي نايفرهن نايرعدن قزيه اتزبالت السقوم تغا حجو خطوز دلك بالي ماكر سلازن هنا دما كم تنسو زقوبرو بيزو خويني انفستس قبرزالو بنيشتي جميرنا أسرون تتغتلنا سبحانقو بعاقمنا عوتات كنكون نخل بعالكم نزا حبريتات تتكيمكم ينفسوا تقبروا تدخلوا تخينكم ستوك ماركت بليز قبروا ناتي حجز انتدليهم دما كم زاب ويب سايت يزولوا حبريتا وسيتكم كحجزوكم سقم توسدوا يغني اللي